So we're gonna kick things off with the ElseNerds, Else News of the week, and we're kicking things off with basically the CW getting a whole nother show. I mean, a whole nother superhero show. I mean, they've got every day of the week except Friday that has a superhero show or a comic book show, for that matter. So why not add another one? Greg Berlanti's Black Lightning moves to the CW with a pilot pickup. Um, Now, Black Lightning, that's from Corey. That's from the Wildstorm universe. Is that correct?
No, Black Lightning is kind of a seminal character, one of the first African American characters in comics, and certainly in DC's universe. Has been around since the 70s. I believe Denny O'Neil did one of the most definitive runs of the character. But he was in Batman the Outsiders in the 80s. I remember a story distinctly where he was invited to join the Justice League, and he decided against it because he felt like they didn't concentrate on street level crimes and urban neighborhoods, and he just thought that was not really for him. But has been utilized so much. He has two daughters in the DC universe as well, or has over time, one of which was part of an Outsiders group years later that was run by Dick Grayson and Roy Harper, and another one that was part of the JSA.
Nice. So, Tom, how are you familiar, besides the crash course introduction of Black Lightning? How familiar are you with him?
I am not familiar at all with Black Lightning, so I'm very curious to see how this blends in to the DCW that is shaping up. Every DC show coming to the CW, which is great. I actually enjoy 3 of the 4 very much, and Legends of Tomorrow's okay. I go in and out on my love of that. I like a lot of the characters, but they're all very different in tone, right? And so bringing in Black Lightning sounds like it's a way to take something that's even farther from each other than the other ones, which is cool.
Yeah. The other thing I sort of wonder is, are we getting to a point with the DCW shows, like you so elegantly coined there, where we're going to hit oversaturation, and where we're going to run into the problems of some shows are going to have to leave in order to get these new shows?
Well, they may be hedging their bets a little bit there, right? By bringing in another one. That way you are able to drop one. Arrow's been going for a while. They're going to drop the flashbacks after this season. And as much as I like that show, and it was the first one, I don't know how much longer you can run that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've already had characters that have died and then have to search for replacements for on that show. They've gone through 2 different sort of ensemble casts to have them have a Team Arrow. One team that was all based around being Arrow Light, and now the new team, which is more various form of heroes, which to me is more interesting because it gives us aspects of a Justice League without actually giving us a Justice League. But yeah, you're right. The tonal difference of the shows is part of what makes it work. Supergirl is very lighthearted and has a good element to it that's sort of tonally felt similar to The Flash when it first started, but I think has improved and got its own voice a little bit more, while it still seems like she steals a little too much from the Superman mythos. You can't really say that that's weird because they do the same thing with Arrow ripping off Batman left and right.
Yeah.
And what I like,
intentional, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what I like about Black Lightning is if they follow the character from the comics, he was a school teacher, which is something that I don't think we've seen represented in any of the shows so far. And if they do have it follow him as a father, that's another aspect that we haven't really seen much of. So I think that there's a lot that could be played with, on top of the fact that it's a person of color, which we haven't had a lead on one of the shows be that yet.
No, yeah, definitely. I am looking forward to this, but I do wonder, Arrow makes sense in the logical, I think we made the joke on a past episode of, when we get to season 6, are they then going to talk about do a flashback to his first year in Starling City and stuff like that, or how are they going to rework the show? But it could make sense for that to eventually be replaced and all that. But I don't know. It's it's
I mean,
one that,
Legends of Tomorrow is the more likely one to be replaced because it's just not as popular, and they're having a hard time finding the real direction of that show. But it's also newer, so they're not spending as much money on it. The stars haven't been as round. The contracts aren't building up as high as they get on an older show. So I look at Arrow and I think, yeah, okay, season 6 they can probably do. Can they stretch it to a 7 or beyond? It's hard to see.
Yeah.
Right. And plus, we're also seeing with some of the characters that have been on these shows, them getting contracts that allow them to cross over between all the different shows as opposed to being tied down to one program. And that's happened more with the villains. But Mr. Freeze and John Barrowman's character, and I think Zoom is one of them, they're all getting utilized in ways that they're not strictly a Flash character or an Arrow character, but they get to work their way between all the different programs. And so if Stephen Amell decides not to continue with Arrow, that doesn't mean that he doesn't get to still be Green Arrow on other programs.
Yeah, which may be a better option to say, let's pay Steve his rate to show up as a guest star from time to time on Black Lightning, on Supergirl, and get a big pop out of that versus continuing to play that. That said, I really don't see them canceling Arrow anytime soon. No. And the fact that they're bringing Black Lightning in means that they're bullish. They're riding the hot wave here. And how does Fox pass on this? Is it because they look at the CW and they say everyone's going to think it's a CW show because it's Berlanti anyway? It's not going to fit. I don't quite understand why they would be so committed to it and then at the last minute drop it.
I think it could have been something along the lines of, like, Fox has this innate ability to just cancel greatness. Like shows that could be really great and then they go, no, sort of deal. But I don't know, Corey, what do you think?
I think that what it probably is that Fox was expecting it was going to star Sinbad, because Sinbad had done the Saturday Night Live skit in the 80s where Black Lightning was the only one not invited to Superman's funeral. And I mean, why would you not want to get Sinbad back?
So they probably have some kind of option on his contract too.
Yeah, I would think. The last thing I actually remember him being in was an episode of American Dad. So who knows?
No, yeah, true. And also, I do think I want to add that I believe with like the Vampire Diaries is their final season. So the CW does have openings. It's just they are eventually they might as well change their name to DCW or something like that.
I mean, they're trying to be the millennial network, right? Yeah. But it is mostly genre shows. I mean, Jane the Virgin is a pretty big hit that's not squarely in that genre. But everything else has a horror or sci-fi aspect to it, even Riverdale.
Yeah, Riverdale definitely has taken the comic idea into a completely different direction. But when they've tried other things, they seem to kind of be very hit or miss in landing more on the miss side, which is too bad. Jane the Virgin has done well. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is an excellent show and shows a lot of originality and has gotten good recognition, but I don't know if it's gotten the numbers that it should. But at least they followed up with it and given it another season. I think it's been renewed for seasons 3 already, which is great. But yeah, at some point they need to think about diversifying a little bit more. And the question is, how many more seasons are we going to get out of shows that have been there for so long, like Supernatural, which is a hit show, but can't continue indefinitely?
Apparently it can, though. Like that, I remember it being teased in Smallville after what's his name left Smallville and joined Supernatural. It's been forever. Like I didn't have Wi-Fi, I think, when that show first went on the air.
Yeah,
I think I might have still been recording Buffy episodes on my computer because I didn't have the ability to burn discs on my TiVo yet.
Exactly.
Nice. And I think I just got high-speed internet at that point. But yeah, so the next story is one that Tom, you actually covered on Sword and Laser. That's the apocalyptic comedy Good Omens, from American Gods authors coming to Amazon as a limited event series. So this, I don't know anything about this at all.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's the sheltered life I've lived. but yeah, so it's all I know is that Neil Gaiman is involved with it, and that it'll
Neil
be on.
Gaiman co-wrote the book with Terry Pratchett, who unfortunately recently passed away just in the last 2 years, I think. But they wrote the series. It's kind of a version of I would compare it to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, except about the apocalypse instead of space.
Yeah, it's a beautiful meeting of minds, and we already miss Terry Pratchett, even though he's only been gone for less than 2 years, and it's bittersweet to see this finally come to television without Mr. Pratchett around to appreciate it. But Neil Gaiman's the showrunner of this, and so if anybody can keep Pratchett's spirit alive in it, it's Neil Gaiman, who wrote this book with Pratchett, and it is the best of both of their senses of humor and darkness combined. I mean, it's basically an angel and a demon when the apocalypse begins to come, and there's the 4 horse people of the apocalypse, and the angel and the demon are kind of like lower level, mid-level employees of their various organizations who know they're really supposed to be in competition, but occasionally hang out and chat and share tips about their various workplaces.
Yeah, they're work rivals that are still kind of buddy. It's You're not my favorite person in the world. I know I'm not supposed to like you, but I feel more comforted by the fact that I see you every day than some of the other people that I'm actually supposed to be on the same side with.
No, it sounds
and
really
as I
cool.
recall, because it's been a long time since I've read it, but they essentially try to subvert the apocalypse.
Yeah, because Agnes Nutter, witch, is the one who prophesies that it's going to end on a Saturday. And so the armies of good and evil all get together for one last final battle. And these 2 employees are like, well, maybe it shouldn't end. I mean, isn't there a way out of this? Just again, like your classic average employee who's like, oh man, I really, really don't want that.
Saturday doesn't work for me.
Have a nice life.
No, it sounds cool. And now, I mean, Neil Gaiman, I know he's done writing for like Doctor Who. Has he ever show run anything though?
Well, he has worked in and on shows. So he's written, like you say, for Doctor Who. He was involved very closely with Brian Fuller on American Gods, which of course we have yet to see. But yeah, I think this is his first time actually being the showrunner. So it's a big step up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's worked on scripts for his movies throughout time. He's been in development hell with things like Sandman.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And a lot of other stuff for so long that I think he's certainly got the ins in Hollywood when it comes to doing this kind of series. It's just that he's finally starting to get some of the recognition. Like, this book was written when he was still, I think, pretty early into the time of writing Sandman. So people thought of him as a comic book writer, not a novelist. And I think this was also around the time that he was starting to release books of short stories, and people were seeing, oh, there's a lot more to this guy than just his Vertigo work. But it also was co-written with Terry Pratchett, who was a very prolific writer that had a huge fan base and people had an expectation of. Neil had also written a book for Douglas Adams about the Hitchhiker series that, again, kind of shows where his interests lie. He's always had a thing for that kind of comedic, semi-buddy comedy thing, but he does do dark fiction really well. He did a lot of Lovecraft-style stories and stuff in the Lovecraft universe. I think this is a great example of something that he can do, and like Tom said, we'll show mad respect to Terry because he's very uplifting to the other authors that he's either worked with or known or admired. He's never going to underserve them by putting his stuff first. But I think it's about time to see him get to lead a project and have it come to full fruition, as opposed to have it like, oh, we've been hearing about the Sandman movie and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's going to do it and all this stuff is going to happen, and then it just disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You got anything else you want to add, Tom?
Nothing else except to note that the apocalypse in the book takes place in 2018, and the TV show will debut on Amazon and BBC in 2018.
It's kind of funny how some of these things are working out where the timing is landing just right, because the Twin Peaks coming back at around the 20-year mark, when it was the last thing that was said is I'll see you in 20 years.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Like we're just kind of everybody who's been a geek about these things for so long has gotten to the point where we're either in the industry or we're all such big fans that we're kind of like, what happens if Twin Peaks came back right at the time that it should? You know, what happens if a book that talks about the apocalypse in 2018, which now seems a little more feasible than I wanted to, actually we get that book made into a TV series right then? That's pretty ideal.
Yeah, good set dressing.
Way to piss off all the Back to the Future fans who still are waiting for their hoverboards.
Oh,
Hey,
man.
we got a couple of things that were very hoverboard-like.
Yeah.
And we got self-lacing shoes. So, you know, and we got the Cubs. Not that I enjoyed that personally as a Cardinals fan, but a lot of people did.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, I'm a Lions fan. I know about plenty of regrets.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for the Else News, and we will be right back.